Natasha Friend talks about a parent's alcoholism through the eyes of a teenager. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. And today I have a bit of an interesting book that I want to talk about. It is young adult fiction, which it's always important to talk about that, just what ideas and thoughts and themes we're sharing with the youngsters, which I realize makes me sound a bit old, but I'm getting up there. For people who might know my actual age, they'll be like, what, you're not old or whatever, but like, let's move beyond that. And this book is also a banned book, which is definitely important to talk about and meets the criteria for the weird, because if a book is banned, that is strange. And today's book is all about alcoholism. I am referring to Lush by Natasha Friend, which was published in 2006. For those who don't know, Natasha Friend is a white American writer who has been getting their work published since the early 2000s. Natasha Friend frequently writes about controversial, sensitive topics like alcoholism here. I believe they've also written about bulimia or anorexia, and even about in vitro fertilization and what that means for someone who would to be conceived through that in a sort of fictional narrative. So that's kind of like their bread and butter of what they write about, particularly for young adults. I think they've won a couple of awards for their work, but their work has also been banned. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the analysis section, but it's been challenged because of some of the adult themes, but these are themes for all ages, I would say. Maybe not necessarily all ages, but certainly teenagers can experience this without worry. I've read stuff like this when I was younger, and I turned out to be just fine, I think. Anyways, I don't know too much else about Natasha Friend, but I do hope I encounter her work in the future, because I did enjoy this book. Spoilers for that. But without further ado, let's talk about Lush. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Lush focuses on Samantha Gwen. She is a middle school girl who has a brother named Luke, a younger brother about 4 years old, and they are both dealing with their father's alcoholism. Samantha is a bit ashamed. Luke doesn't really know what to think because he's a 4-year-old. But Samantha sees her father come home drunk, and he slams things and throws things, gets a little angry, but he doesn't get abusive, at least at the start of the story. Samantha wishes her father wasn't drinking all the time, and she also wishes her mom wouldn't ignore the problem, but this is what she has to deal with. And when she asks her father, why he does it, he just says it feels like something clicks into place when he's drinking. Maybe he might be missing something or something like that. And as I mentioned before, her mom seems to ignore it, especially when her father goes missing for a couple days from time to time. And even her father's mother, or her grandmother, seems to be ignoring the issue, specifically telling Sam not to tell anyone about it because that would be airing the family's dirty laundry, which is bad. And so it's worse to talk about it than to simply ignore it. So they just seem to ignore it and hope the problem would go away, which it doesn't seem to be doing. At the same time, Samantha is going through puberty. Her body is developing, and she's growing boobs, which are viewed by her at least as pretty big. And she doesn't seem to be to like the attention that it brings to her, especially from the boys at school. So she's wearing baggier clothes as a result. And to deal with really all of this that's going on in her life, she's writing letters to a person named AJK. She saw someone in the library, a girl named Juliet, who's a high schooler, and thought that person had, advanced knowledge that they could share with Samantha, with herself. And so she wrote to them that she would take letters in a certain book in about whaling. They would just exchange letters through that book, and she finds that she's not receiving letters from Juliet, but rather a person named AJK, who tells her, don't try to change your parents. They're dealing with some own issues with their father, they also kind of talk about what's going on in each other's lives, with Samantha mainly complaining about the way things are going. Also at the library, there is a boy named Drew, who is a high schooler who is paying special attention to Samantha. Samantha realizes that he's really only interested in her body, but they kiss and develop a bit of a relationship, although again, she's just a middle schooler and he's a high schooler, so it's a bit wonky there. And then her father continues to drink, and during one night, Samantha is watching her brother Luke when they go downstairs to get some juice. Her father's working really hard. He even tries to stop drinking from time to time, but it seems like he's continued. And he's working on a big project because he's an architect. And when he brings out the architectural blueprints for her project, Luke spills some juice on it, and her father, who's drunk, responds by smashing a bottle of alcohol on Luke, which messes up his face, and they have to rush him to the emergency room with the help of their neighbors, the Parkers. The Parkers help the family get by while her father is sent to rehab. At the sort of demands of both Samantha and her mother, without telling their grandmother, because she doesn't think that'd be wise. But to cope with all of this, Samantha decides to go to one of Drew's parties, and there she starts to drink, and she fools around with Drew, and we later find out that he wanted to have sex with her, but he found out that she was 13. But the other boys kind of messed with her a little bit, but it doesn't seem to have gone on very far. But it was pretty serious in a maybe kind of assaulting kind of way. And the next day, Samantha wakes up hungover. Her mom learns what happened because one of the high school girls had to drop her off back home. Seems like some people stuck up for her there. And Samantha talks to her mom more about what's the deal with her father. And Samantha goes to school, hears some rumors about herself and what happened, but those eventually die down. And then she finally meets the person who she's been writing letters with, AJK, a sort of young man named Jesse, who is the shelver at the library, who she's been running into a couple times. And he reveals that he's gay, and that's the problem that his father has with him. And he thinks that Jesse is just going through a phase. So they can kind of relate on that. And Jesse decides to take Samantha to go talk with her father at rehab. And it's there that he admits that he's an alcoholic, and he also shares some other important details in their heart-to-heart, which we don't really get to read about because Friend kind of rushes over that, which is a bit strange. But this heart-to-heart seems to have changed Samantha's relationship with her father. And while she waits for her father to get out of rehab, Samantha decides to take the initiative to get rid of all the alcohol in her father's hiding places in the house to make sure he doesn't have the opportunity to slip back into his addiction. And Samantha thinks, well, he might still find alcohol, but it's not going to be in the house where she lives. And then a few days later, the story really ends by Samantha and her mother and her brother, who's kind of shyer at this point and has clearly been affected by what happened with the father. They all go to pick up her father at the rehab facility. Samantha's unsure of what the future will bring, but she is hopeful that things might change. In terms of analysis, there is a little bit we're talking about with Lush. Friend is talking about alcoholism and addiction for young adults, about family affairs and stuff like that, which is very important. One of the main themes that Friend is working with here is that of shame. Samantha is embarrassed by her father's alcoholism. She doesn't really want to talk about it with anyone because she knows this is not how fathers normally act. She wants a normal father-daughter relationship, and that doesn't really seem possible because her father is drinking most of the time, or drunk, and is doing weird things, inappropriate things like driving while drunk, or passing out at parks or something like that, rather than coming home and actually doing fatherly things. She doesn't want others to find out. She hides this from her friends at school. She doesn't want to do any sleepovers at her house because something awful might happen, and she just doesn't want that sort of shame to follow her. And then her mother also sort of deals with the shame, but she does it in other ways. She tries to ignore it, and when it becomes too big to ignore, she tries yoga, which if you're like interpreting that in the reading, it's mainly her trying to sort of cleanse her mind and ease the stress that this alcoholism might bring. But that's not exactly helpful, because you can try that, but if the problem still remains, you're still going to be stressed. No amount of yoga or mindfulness meditation is really going to solve that. And one of the ways that Samantha also deals with this is through the anonymous letters that she's writing to AJK. That seems to help in getting the stress off her chest. What's interesting, though, is that Jesse has his own shame. There's a connection there, and that Jesse not only has that shame, but the trouble with his father, where Jesse reveals that he's gay, and his father thinks that that's just a phase, and Jesse has like his own sort of expression in mind of who he wants to be, and his dad has another, and so that's created a bit of a rift. And like Jesse's not really ashamed of being gay, but he is ashamed. There's shame with like how his father feels about that, and how he can't have a normal relationship with his father because of his father's bigotry. And so there is some connection between what's going on with Jesse and Samantha there. I do like how Friend kind of draws that connection, but also kind of goes out on a limb in 2006 and writes about this bigotry that exists in Jesse trying to thrive despite that, because the culture wasn't that positive back then, I would say. And then there's also the shame for Samantha of her later behavior with her drinking. Like, she feels like she's just like her father after she gets drunk the first night. But she also comes to realize how easy it is to slip into that kind of behavior, because it wasn't exactly like a choice on her part. It just sort of happened because of the events of the night. That does sort of help her better understand her father, but it in no way kind of excuses that for her, or like excuses the bad behavior that her father does. And so ultimately what Friend is arguing here is that burying your problems does not fix the issue. As much as the grandmother wants to ignore it and hope it goes away, burying it and pretending it doesn't exist doesn't make it exist any less. That can apply to alcoholism here and addiction, but it could also apply to a lot of other issues. And that's kind of an important message to send to teenagers, that they may think that they can simply walk away from their problems, but those problems will remain when they come back to that relationship. Friend is also talking about enabling or ignoring here. Friend shows how a family can how a family culture can condone alcoholism, and how easy it is to just sort of forget that that's a problem and see it grow before your eyes to a point where you can no longer really fix that problem because it's grown too large for your inexperienced family to really handle. Samantha's mother kind of skirts around the problem, just saying it's not a big deal at first and making justifications, and then finally going to yoga and just trying to forget that it's even happening. Kind of not really addressing it and just excusing the behavior for what's going on, like not really punishing anyone for it, and not really doing anything to stop it from happening by getting rid of the alcohol in the house. The dad's mother, or Samantha's grandmother, kind of enables it as well by cleaning up the problems around her father. And also, it should be noted that the dad's dad, or the Nana's husband, was also drinking and might have abused Nana in the past. And so there might be a history of this use in the family, genetics, but also learned behavior a little bit. Certainly not the abuse or anything like that, but just the learned behavior of excusing alcoholism and normalizing it when it becomes a problem, and because maybe you think that if you like, the only other solution would be to get divorced, and you don't want to do that because till death do you part, and other such beliefs like that. And so, I think there's a need to like excuse it and justify it and pretend like it's not there, and fixating on yoga to kind of focus on other things, and a lot of different kinds of justifications taking place. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. "It's not that simple, Sam. I used to think his drinking was a choice, but it's not. I wish I'd tried to get help sooner, but there were always excuses, justifications. It wasn't really a problem. He could stop anytime he wanted. He was getting promotions at work. I'd look at him and think, okay, he's fine." And that's a really good example of, the justifications, the enabling that sort of takes place there. Like you justify to yourself that, oh, this can't be a problem because he's doing things that he would normally do, that it doesn't appear that this drinking is getting away, so it can't be that much of a problem. But it slowly becomes a greater problem, and even though in those areas, like, it's not causing a problem, it is in other areas. And but you've allowed it to go on for so long that you can't do anything about it now, as I was saying before. So there's a little bit of a good exploration of enablism, which again teenagers need to hear, especially if their peers are doing a lot of drinking or engaging in other sorts of addictions. And then there's also the use of the Parkers in this story, how they're the neighbors and they want to help, but they also seem to be unconsciously supporting this behavior by hoping the father comes back, and pretending like it's not that big of a deal. But they should be they should be acknowledging that it is a larger problem and helping the father get help, which they sort of do by urging him to go to rehab. And Samantha, for her part, she sort of stops this cycle of enablism, where while her father's at rehab, she goes and gets rid of all the alcohol in the house, thereby preventing him from having an opportunity to get more. Sure, he can go outside the house, but Samantha's made sure that it's not available inside the house. Now, normally that would be the responsibility of an adult and not a Samantha, and not a young teenager. But sometimes it falls on teenagers to be the adults in the room, to take responsibility like this. Not that it should be, but again, like there's ways that you can help and make sure that the cycle really stops there. Friend is also sort of talking about a culture of high school sexism and assault in this story, how the boys at Samantha's high school have created a list of like who has the best body and other sorts of things like that, and has forced the women to try to compete with each other lest they be excluded from this, and how the school doesn't seem to be doing anything despite the fact that it's common knowledge. And then the assault, like how the boys take advantage of her when she's drunk, all of that is pretty bad. I think Friend is trying to say something about this, but she's focusing so much on other things that it kind of drops by the wayside. And I do think that it should have been excluded, or there should have been like a direction to head with that, because otherwise it just feels weird that she's not addressing this more when it's a noticeable problem. And as I mentioned before, a thing that I really like about this story is Friend acknowledging how easy it is to slip into alcoholism as an addiction, because Samantha's mother talks about how her father didn't used to drink, but while he was in college, it started with 1 or 2 drinks a night of partying, which is psychologists even deem that as normal, because that's just socialized binge drinking, and it doesn't become a problem until it affects your life in a significant way. So nobody would immediately call that a problem, but after college and after they are for a period of time after they started a family, the father wasn't drinking, but then he began drinking a little bit more because of work and other responsibilities. And so it slowly grew to a point where it became a larger problem that needed to be addressed. And obviously the mother wasn't really addressing it here, but it didn't suddenly happen, which is a very important thing to acknowledge, especially for young readers, because most problems in life won't be sudden. They will they'll be gradual over time, something that you should have looked at before, but now it's grown out of proportion. And so I think that's very important, that programs like DARE, for example, kind of make it seem like addiction is sudden, and if you have one beer, you're going to become addicted, or one weed or one heroin, as the DARE program tries to scaremonger. But it's not like that. It's more gradual, and what seems like like something normal at first quickly grows. Again, it grows out of proportion, and that's something that the young people really need to know about. I will say there are a couple problems with this story. One is that it does seem to gloss over major conversation, major details in the story. There's a part where Samantha talks to her father in rehab, and he's like, I'm an alcoholic. And then it kind of goes forward outside of that conversation to when she's talking with AJK again. And she's like, I had a meaningful discussion with my dad, and we're not really privy to that discussion, which I feel is a problem, because those details could have really added more to the story, given it more of an emotional impact, and certainly given me more quotes to possibly use for this video. But none of that is there, and that happens in other sections of the book too. I just feel like if Friend added more detail, this could have really made the story stand out and go like a step beyond. But here it just feels like it's missing something as a result, and so that does hurt the story a little bit. And then it also does feel like maybe Friend is minimizing abuse, because just like in the story, like the father smacks Luke in the face with a bottle of alcohol, which is a very large problem, and that's never really fully addressed. Luke just takes a back seat, whereas like Samantha notes that Luke is like shyer now, more reserved, and certainly psychologically affected by everything, and I don't think she negates that, and there is some worry that life might be changed once the father gets out of rehab, but there's an eagerness for him to get out of rehab, and the abuse hasn't really been addressed. It needs to be. It feels like it needed to be a bigger part of the story, and it just wasn't there. The last thing worth noting is that, of course, as I mentioned before, this is a banned book. And when any book is banned, you got to ask why people want to ban it. And based on what I've seen, what I've read, and what I've heard on the internet and whatnot, there might be 3 reasons for that. One is the questioning of authority that takes place in this story. Samantha views her father as irresponsible and constantly backtalks him, which more conservative people, might not take. They might take umbrage with that. They might not like that, because young people are supposed to listen to authority. But it's very important to note the context in which she's backtalking, which is like her father's doing bad things and she's trying to call it out as a problem. And so what I think Friend is trying to say here is that sometimes the adults in the room, they won't know what's best. They'll make mistakes that you'll need to call them out on. And just because someone's an adult doesn't mean they're the best or the brightest or the most responsible. And that's kind of not what the conservative people of America want to tell the youth. But I think that's one of the reasons. The other reason is maybe more the sexual nature of the story, which is just in a brief moment, like in the middle of the story. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But, those conservative people might view it as like one instance of sexuality makes a book a no-go for young people. But, this is happening whether you want it or not. Like, teenagers are talking and thinking about sex. So you might as well give them an example of what like bad, like a bad relationship, a bad romantic experience might be, and how like people like Drew might only be interested in your body, and that's not good. You might have feelings for them, but that like they're not out for your best, or they're not out for your heart, they're out for your body, which is not good. And then another reason is I've seen this with other books, and that's it's the fact that there's a gay character in this story. Jesse admits that they're gay and talks about how their father is not accepting of that. And I've seen a number of like Moms Against Liberty people and other such people who pick out like lesbian, bisexual, gender, or like transgender gay themes in books and just say this is not appropriate for children. They should not know about that. And it's not a big deal here. It's a very minor detail about a character that is kind of essential to who they are, but it doesn't suggest anything to the reader, I would say. It's just merely saying, hey, there's people with, different ways of the world, different experiences of the world out there, and they might have similar struggles as you. It's not suggesting that you should go out and be gay like those Moms Against Liberty people or the conservatives think. But it's important to talk about why this is a banned book and refute it and talk about how it's silly and stupid to ban books. And if you truly don't want people to read books, the best thing to do is ignore it. But, the conservatives of the world, the book banners of the world, they don't really get that. They're too busy with their heads up their ass, to be honest. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Lush by Natasha Friend. A pretty solid book. Certainly not one of the better sort of young adult books or books that I've read this year in general, but it's still good. I think it's maybe an important resource for young people who are dealing with alcoholism in their family, or just have questions about that sort of thing. It's important that people have this out there, just because, if they're not able to see themselves in the books that they read, or feel like other people have similar experiences to them, then they're going to feel lost. They're not really going to see if they're not going to really feel like they have a place in the world. So this is a very good book, even if it's not as punchy, I would say, not even if it doesn't hit as much as I would hope it would. I certainly think there's more room for it to grow, but it's still something worth checking out from your local library, or something like that. If you have anything to say about my review here, let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this book or this author if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and addiction fighting travels. Farewell.